Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar series on creating a high-impact recruiting culture. Today, we're going to be kicking off actually the very first inaugural book club event that AALU Gamma is going to do, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But the main purpose of today's kickoff webinar is to discuss the AALU Gamma Foundation's newest white paper called Creating a High-Impact Recruiting Culture. And can I get us to move on to the next slide, please? Today, as you can see with me, I have Dave Savage. He is the head of the research committee at the AALU Gamma Foundation's board. And Dave is joining us. So Dave has been in the financial services industry for 28 years now. In the past 26 years, he's been with Thrivent. He is currently part of the leadership team of the Pacific Southwest region and lives in San Diego, California. For the past 16 years, Dave has volunteered his time with Gamma and the Gamma Foundation in various roles, including professional development, chair of the Foundation Research Committee, which he is serving in this capacity for this webinar, and as a foundation trustee. And as you can probably see from the picture, I am not Emily Boynton. My name is Megan Bronner, and I am the Director of Leadership and Professional Development here at AALU Gamma. And I'm going to be subbing in for Emily today. So Dave, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, and welcome everybody who is joining us.
Great. So we're going to just a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start off, and Dave and I are going to give you a little bit of information about what this white paper, Creating a High Impact Recruiting Culture, is all about. And then we'll have some time for some questions and answers. So please, as we're going through the information during this kind of initial informational part of the webinar, we really encourage you get into that Q&A box and type in those questions, because we'll have some time for Dave and I to answer those. Those can be questions, anything about the research itself, to about the white paper, and then also about the book club, the virtual book club that we're going to be doing as part of this. After this, we will work on the book club itself. We will talk about the book club itself, and then we'll give you some kind of final calls to action at the very end of our time here. And it actually looks like my colleague Emily might be joining us. So Emily, I don't get to pretend to be you anymore.
Thank you so much, Megan, for taking over in this time period. I know it was a little bit crazy during this time, so thank you for doing that for me.
Well, welcome. And actually, everybody, I'm going to go on and hand it back over to Executive Director of the AALU Gamma Foundation, Emily Boynton.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wow,
I'm
glad
sorry
to
for
be
the
here.
technical. Oh, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but as Megan was saying, I am the Executive Director of the AALU Gamma Foundation, and I am very excited to be here today with our amazing partner, Dave Savage, who is the Research Chair for the Gamma Foundation. Before we get over to Dave and some questions we have for him about our Creating a High Impact Recruiting Culture paper, I just wanted to briefly say that the AALU Gamma Foundation's mission is to encourage educational and research endeavors related to the art and science of the financial security profession. So we're really the science behind the solution in our industry's future, and have many free resources to help you and your firm succeed, thereby ensuring your clients' financial futures. Today, we're here to talk about recruiting. In a profession where the 4-year retention rate has held steady at a low of about 11% and a high of 16% for more than a decade, attracting, finding, and selecting top performers remains the #1 priority for most agency and firm leaders. So today we have the opportunity to hear from the Foundation's Research Chair, Dave Savage, on the AALU Gamma Foundation's latest research, Creating a High Impact Recruiting Culture. Dave has been in the financial services industry for 28 years
Emily,
now.
we did the bio already.
Oh,
Sorry,
great.
we did the
Thank
bio
you,
already.
Dave.
We won't bore people.
All right. Well, then, Dave, I'll get right into it with some question and answer. Now that you've heard from me a little bit. So, Dave, why don't we get started off on the real meat of this interview? And if a member of the profession reads this white paper right here in front of us, what problems will it help them solve?
And just a little bit of background, I am from Southern California, but with the shelter at home and work from home, I am now headed out of Dodge at my cabin in northern Minnesota. So a little bit rustic, but if I have to work from home, there's no better place than at the lake. So I'm excited. I've 16 years I've been volunteering with Gamma and the Gamma Foundation, and really excited about this union with AALU. And here's what I'll tell you is over those 16 years that I've been active and involved, the number one thing people ask us to do research on, the highest attended LAM sessions have always been around recruiting and selection. And so when we look to do and commission new research studies, we had looked back at some of our older ones in 2004, 5, and 6. We did Finding the Right People, Building the Right People, and Keeping the Right People. And we had a group of volunteers comb through those to look at, are those trends still relative? What has changed? And we found that some of the things were still relative, but yet a lot of things have changed. And since then, a couple of years ago, we did a study on attracting the right people. What are the right messages that we should be using to attract people into a conversation about our profession? We just did a research study on growing your firm through teaming, whether that be through sales growth, capacity growth of agents, or even just from a retention standpoint. We've been really kind of trying to listen to you and say, what's relevant to you? So our latest research study was in 2018 called Building a High Performance Business, which kind of encompassed all of those pieces. And in there, we found that there's 4 major cultural drivers for agency growth or firm growth. And underneath those 4 were 10 best practices that we found pretty consistent in top performing businesses. This latest white paper, Creating a High Impact Recruiting Culture, was one of those 4 cultures that we really kind of dove into and looked at and wanted to go into more depth and capture what are the best of the best doing. Who's having success? What are they doing? We've also written some ebooks around recruiting women and recruiting through centers of influence, social media, retention, leading through change, a lot of different things there. But this one really focuses in on how do you build the right kind of culture in your firm. Another thing we heard loud and clear is that learning styles have been changing over the years. If you've been working with the foundation's materials over the years, you'll know that we do a lot of research and then we give you like a 200-page book. And while that might have been a great learning style 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in today's multimedia world and with people's short attention spans, they want podcasts, they want videos, they want short papers to read, they want interactive study group type sessions. So this is really the foundation's first multimedia product. We did this short white paper. By short, I mean, I think it's like 60 pages long of just packed with good information around culture building and best practices. We launched a series of 10 podcasts recently, and we're having ambitions to grow those podcasts into a regular format in the future. But we've also tried videos, ebooks, just trying to get you the tools and strategies in a medium that you feel comfortable with to be able to use for your personal development, to be able to use with your leadership teams, as well as trying to tie back current research to some research that we've done in the past, so you can kind of get a whole encompassing view as you're looking to grow and build strategies for the future. So long answer to a short question, Emily, but I hope that helped a little bit.
No, definitely. I think what I'm hearing over and over again from you and people who have used the foundation's tools is that there are a lot of resources out there. And we're just so excited to be able to give this Creating a High Impact Recruiting Culture to everyone, because it really is the culmination of all of those research and recruitment practices that we've put out there in the last 10 to 12 years, at least on recruiting. But would you say, what problems do you think it would solve now? What can you give us a little bit more of or what the best practices are that are highlighted in this particular white
Yeah,
paper?
so I kind of mentioned the framework from our Building a High Performance Business, and this is 1/4 of that research study, the high impact recruiting culture. So we're not going to get into the high expectations culture, the trust culture, and the learning culture that you need. This one's really going to drill down around 3 best practices that we found in high performing businesses. One is to cultivate a recruiting mindset in your agency or firm. 2 is warm source recruiting. We find consistently over and over the best candidates are found through warm source methods. And then lastly, we found that those who are successful in growing apply a rigorous and consistent approach to their selection. So they're not shooting from the hip, they're not just hiring all, they're really finding a consistent approach to hiring the right people. So that's what we'll get into with this study.
That's great. What would you say is new or different about this particular study from the other studies that we've had in the foundation?
I think some of the things new in here are just some of the changes and trends from the past. You know, when I mentioned we look back at our studies that we did in 2004, 5, and 6, a lot of that is still same about creating a individual candidate profile, around working with your existing agents and advisors for referrals. But it was interesting, back then in the mid 2000s, the internet was just starting to take off. It was just starting to revolutionize business, and technology since then, over the last 15 years, has really shaped the way we do our business. Whether it's social media and reaching out and finding people through social media, things like LinkedIn and Instagram, whether it's doing just simple background checks and learning about people or people learning about us, having a digital presence is extremely important now. And even how leaders operate, having a contact management system and reaching people in a way that they want to be reached. Email and phone isn't the only 2 types of communication methods. So adapting to the audience that you want to work with, and really kind of tailoring an approach to your ideal candidate, technology has really probably been the biggest change we've seen over the last 15 years.
Definitely. Technology has consumed our lives in the last couple months even right now. So in these last couple of months, have you used any of the techniques from the white paper, or are there any key takeaways from creating a high impact recruiting culture that you would like that you use in your firm right now?
Well, probably similar to other leaders on the call today, we have been putting a lot of these types of things into place. We have been working on our culture and building our culture. We've been building some rigorous and consistent processes of accountability and follow through. Boy, and then February hit, right? Not only could we not go out and shake hands with people and meet people face to face, we had to learn a whole virtual work environment. And probably similar to you, we had candidates in the pipeline. And how do you keep those candidates active and engaged in the pipeline when you can't take a test? So in my firm, we take Life and Health Series 7 and Series 66. Well, you can't take those tests. We couldn't even do background checks to make offers to people. So we had to adapt and work and try to find new ways to stay engaged with people virtually. And we just kind of shifted to, hey, if they can't be studying to take tests, let's start teaching them the basics of prospecting and the products that we use. Similarly, how do we find new candidates? We do a lot of things like career fairs and college recruiting. Well, again, we can't just set up a table and go visit anymore. So how do we adapt and shift to things like virtual career fairs, build different relationships with universities? How do we put together webinars around career overviews and attract people? I think LinkedIn for us has been one of the big tools that I think we've really picked it up with. With so many people right now out of work, we're trying to promote a profession that says, hey, you're only out of work if you want to be out of work. Ours is a great profession in that no matter what the economy is doing, our agency, our firm right now is thriving through this because people need us now more than ever. So just trying to tailor our approach in a different environment and trying to be as nimble as we can in an environment where we can't be out shaking hands with people.
Yes, that makes sense. A lot of pivoting going on right now in our industry.
Yeah, sure is.
So would you say that, so I know that in the white paper right now, we have really a breakdown of the candidate profile, recruiting sources, selection process, and what top performers do differently. Would you say that you use that profile or any of those particular tools to assess willingness and ability from the white paper? Do you use that in your recruitment, or does anybody on your team use these particular things, focusing pre-contract training on prospecting rather than sales activity, those sorts of things?
Yeah, I would say one big takeaway that we took out of this personally was I think we all have an ideal candidate, you know, the type of age, the type of personality, the type of drive and motivation, you know, what's their why for wanting to be in this kind of a profession. And I think the takeaway we took out of this was, how do we find the right candidate that matches the culture we're trying to build as an agency and firm? So I think we took a lot of pieces out of this, and it was very helpful to say, you know, our region, our group of 200 financial advisors, we're known for this. We like to have fun this way. We like to use this type of an advisory process. This is what we believe in. This is the why of our company. This is the why of our agency. And we built that into our ideal candidate profile. And it's changed a little bit of the way in some of the sources of how we look for people. It's changed a little bit of the way of how we interview and select people for this type of career. Because if you are a highly motivated, great salesperson, but you do not believe in the same type of philosophy and why of our company and our region, you know, Thrivent might not be the right company for you. And so we're really trying to find and grow from a cultural standpoint. And I think that's something every one of you could learn as you kind of go through this study group with this impacting a high recruiting culture, more than just selection. It's not a numbers game, it's a people game, and finding the right kind of people. So.
Perfect. All right. Well, and in here, I would say that, you know, we definitely talk about focusing on warm source recruiting. We talk about that culture really drives that high performance, to your point, Dave. Now, would you say that, are there any other calls to actions or key takeaways in this white paper that you would pinpoint as, this is what I've used, or this is what our firm contributed to the research? Anything to that effect that you would like to add to your answer?
Sure, I will. You know, I'll kind of look at, I talked about the 3 best practices that we dive deep into around building the right kind of culture and mindset. Those were creating the recruiting mindset. Those were the warm source recruiting and the rigorous and consistent process. So under the recruiting mindset, you know, I think a big part of learning that you'll get out of this is, how do I get my entire agency on board with the one big goal, the one why do we want to grow? And that's not just your agents and representatives, that's your staff people, that's your leaders, that's the whole group kind of getting on board. And when you find that you get everybody on board, it's not just the numbers, it's going through the numbers because everybody's committed to the why, or the one big goal. In here, we kind of created 4 C's of a recruiting mindset. We'll dive deep into clarity and communication, confidence and culture, and really kind of break those apart and work with you. There's some interactive pieces to the study that you can take back to your team and say, how do we put this into place and tailor it to what we're trying to accomplish? In the warm source recruiting, there's kind of 4 key topics in there. One is identifying and attracting the top performers. This research study, we didn't really have to go too deep into that because we just a couple of years prior did a full research study on attracting the right people. So we kind of looked back at that and said, instead of redoing and recasting all that research, let's just kind of look at those common themes and what have we learned in the few years since that study's been out. So really kind of diving into the right messaging to attract the right top performers. The next two are pretty familiar with most of us. One is how do we continually optimize the agent referral process? How do we continue to get our best? I don't know about you, but I think 80% of our hires come from our existing representatives. So how do we keep that culture of people wanting to contribute, wanting to give back, just like somebody gave back to them when they started their career, as well as developing proper centers of influence? How do we build those relationships with the right types of people who can open doors and introduce us to people? And then lastly, in the warm source recruiting, we really dive into social media. I think this is, like I said, one of the biggest changes. In 2006, reading that study back then, it was like, woo, we have this thing called monster.com and people can put their resumes in there and I can spend all day reading resumes. Well, we've come a long way in how we use the internet and how we use different digital mediums to be in recruiting. So we explore some of those kind of things, and also kind of have some templates in here on how you can work with your team to build a strategy. How do we want to leverage social media? How do we want to leverage different digital media and content so that you can build a strategy for your growth potential? And then lastly, the final best practice is the rigorous and consistent process. We've kind of interviewed a lot of top performing groups and taken some of their steps and some of their processes, and again, build some interactive pieces that you can take back with your team and say, how do we do that, and how do we put that into place? And that's probably one of the biggest things of what my group has had the most success in the last 18 months is really putting some of that rigorous accountability and follow through and expectation setting on all of our leaders. And it's not just the leaders, it's our marketing people, it's our trainers, it's our community engagement group. We've really pulled everybody together to get on the same page for our common growth goal. So lots of good pieces in here. It's not just a study that you pick up and leave on your bedstand and read at night. This is something that you'll work on with your team, and there's a lot of interactive pieces here to have some study group sessions, some planning sessions, to just really look at the way you're doing things and try to pull some different things out of what top performing people are doing to build a system that's right for you. So.
That's great overview. Thank you so much, Dave, for that.
Yeah.
With that, I'm going to turn, I see we have a couple questions in the chat box. Molly, were you going to read those out loud to us, or shall I read them?
Hi, Emily, Megan again. I'm going to go on and I will field these questions for you. So the first one that we had that I've actually already answered, it's in the answered area, is there a white paper? And the answer is yes. There's a link in there that you can go and download the white paper. It's free for everybody in the entire profession, and it really provides all of all of the meat. The next one that we have for you, Dave, is how are you doing virtual career fairs? And then the follow-up question to that is how are you driving attendance?
It's a great question. The first one we had was really driven by our corporate office. We had our head of our field distribution and our chief financial officer and one of our top leaders in the field as kind of the agenda. And we had all of our recruiting directors kind of look through not just the people we're having current conversations with, but we went back in our database and said, who have I had a meaningful conversation with in the last, say, 2 to 3 years? Because a lot is changing right now. Some people might be, more interested in looking at a different career. So we just invited and started picking up the phone and talking to people, invited a ton of people to that one. And we had a great turnout to that. And it was great to hear from our CFO about how our company's strength is right now, some of the direction of where we're going, and then an opportunity for someone other than me, who might be the person always talking to the candidate, to hear from some of the other leaders. I think we even had a top performing new advisor on that call talk about why they're in this profession and what they're doing. So that's kind of the format. Doesn't have to, you don't have to wait for your large corporation to do it, but that's kind of what some of the key messages that worked really well for us. And I think I just heard back on that we just did that a month ago. Over half of the people that attended that are in our selection process right now. So we took a large group of people, and half of them right now are engaged in taking assessments, going through our interview process right now. So in addition to that, you know, we're trying to get small groups on local markets to just do informal Zoom meetings like this. Just tell a little bit about the career profession, as well as learning as fast as we can, just like you. How do you do a virtual career fair? You know, tying with some of these career fair companies, tying with the universities that you have relationships with, just learning and trying to be nimble as well as we can. So, good question.
Yeah, definitely being nimble is the key. Thank you, Dave. Specifically, when people cannot take their tests, what are you and your firm doing to keep them engaged and to keep them in the pipeline?
Great question. Well, the good thing is proctors are starting to open up again. There's sometimes you can get a test, sometimes they're pushed back a little bit. But what we did, well, one of the things we do is we have a short period where we actually hire them as an employee and pay them to study. The first thing our company did was extended that paid study period. We're like, we're making an investment in you. We're going to continue to make an investment in you. It's not your fault. You've probably all had the candidate like I did. Their Series 7 was scheduled for the day that the proctors decided to shut down, right? Can you know how much work there is in studying for that test? And then you get there that day and it's like, I can't take my test for another 45 days. So, you know, continuing to keep them part of our group, and then working with them on their Project 100 or Project 500, whichever you call it, teaching them a little bit about the products and the services and the process, having them continue to expand their natural market, really trying to do anything we can to keep them engaged in looking at what can we use this time for to give them a head start. So when they're ready to go, you know, that first couple months of activity is twice what we thought we could have. So, but constant communication is really the big thing. You know, if you're not talking to those candidates, they're probably on the internet looking for something else to do because they got to feed their family too. So for us, it was a combination of paying them and keeping them involved and engaged as much as we can. And that was tough because, you know, we had 200 advisors who didn't know how to work from home virtually. So it was just as important to keep our recruiting pipeline going as it was to keep our sales funnel going with our existing advisors. And so we just kind of put an all hands on deck and really tried to keep both of those channels flowing as fast as we could. Great question.
Perfect. I love that creativity. And if you have the resources to keep people engaged by paying them as well, that is a fantastic way to go. Because as you said, people have to feed their families. They have to keep their lives going. But if you're there to support them, then that makes a lot of sense. I love that. Thank you, Dave. We do have another question in the chat box. What does the research say about getting everyone involved in the firm in recruiting? With everything being virtual during this time, what are some of the successful methods you have used to make sure your firm remains cohesive? So, two-part question there.
Sure. So from the research study, a big part of creating a recruiting mindset is everybody has a hand in growth. And you know, somebody who might be the receptionist at your office doesn't think they really have a recruiting responsibility, but yet they know people and they interact with people every day. So one of the things we did personally to try to create that culture difference is we started pulling those kinds of people into our annual planning sessions. We started out with a little bit about our history, and we kind of talked about where we want to grow this year and where we want to be 3 to 5 years down the road. and help them understand what are the people that we look for, and how they could introduce somebody and how they could play a role in this. So I think if everybody has a shared why, and they, people want to contribute to the bigger cause. So getting them involved, getting everybody involved, a chance to say, this is what our vision, this is what our growth is, and this is the tactics we're going to do along the way, whether it helps them directly or indirectly in that culture setting.
I love that. And I know that in the research, there's a lot of statistics saying specifically that getting everyone involved in the office, from the office manager to the sales associate to the leader, involved in recruiting or empowering them to be a part of recruiting is a great way to not only build that culture, but also increase that recruiting mindset and recruiting statistics throughout the office. So we have in the introduction and in the end of our white paper all throughout different methods and tools on how best to build that culture, but also where to go and how to think about recruiting. Are there any specific tools that you would like to just make sure that everybody really pay attention to in the white paper, or any particular key takeaways before we start to talk a little bit more about the book club that we have going on? Anything else you want to add, Dave?
I would say, here's probably one of the bigger benefits that we've had by really investing in these tools and building the recruiting mindset is, I mentioned 80% of our hires come from agent or representative referrals. The lion's share of those are coming from our first and second year people. So because we've changed a little bit around the messaging, because of how we're attracting a different kind of person now, people that we want to be part of the why of our firm, they're excited, and we're investing a lot in them to help them be successful. And when they're excited and when they're starting to see some success, they want to get their friends involved. They want to, talk to others about the need in our profession. And we're getting a lot more of those warm source candidate referrals from our first and second year people than we are from what traditionally was more of that 10 to 20 year person who wants to grow a team or wants somebody in their office or thinking about succession planning. Those were usually our targets for agent referrals. Now we're creating a buzz and an excitement with those newer people, the shorter tenure, and we're getting a lot more success there. So that's all part of culture. It's all part of wanting to be something that's growing and thriving and helping each other out to be successful and helping more people. So.
And it sounds like people want to get their friends involved. When they're having fun, they want to bring their friends along with them, or previous colleagues or something like that in their old career. Yeah. Would you say so?
Well, and I think it's really easy for a recruiting leader to say, or for that new agent to say, I should say, why would I want to recruit my friend? We know the same people. That's just ruining, my pipeline of potential clients. And the opposite is exactly true, is you find that they know more people, and together when that group of people on your Project 100 start to see both of you in the profession and both of you doing well, it's like, wow, I need help, and this is the company and the firm to do it with, and the referrals growing out from there just grow exponentially. So it's not a scarcity mentality at all. We've just seen an abundance of opportunity when we can get like-minded people together, helping, referring and growing together. It's kind of leave nobody behind. If I want to be successful, I want to carry you with me. And if they know each other and have a friendship from before this, and they brought them into the career, they're going to help pull them along and make them be successful. So our success rate has gone up in our launch as a result of that as well. So it's all part of culture. Lots of good stuff in the study. In these templates to be able to really kind of roll up your sleeves and say, what are we doing? What's working? What are other high-performing leaders doing that's working? And would that work in our firm? And just open up really good conversations and try different things. That's really what these research studies are for, and that's how we built this format, is so that you can kind of just take a look at what you're doing, what are the best firms doing out there, bring in what you think fits and try it and adapt to your growth trajectory in your culture. So.
That was a fantastic segue into our next moment. I do want to take an opportunity to not only thank you, Dave, but to allow people to download the free white paper. You can see on your screen right now, we took a screenshot of where you can not only find the white paper on our unifytheprofession.org website. You just go to it by toggling over to COVID-19, where all of our discussion topics and fantastic news you can use right now, resources are there. If you click on that, toggle down to that recruiting series. On there, you'll be able to not only participate in the book club, but also you'll be able to download the white paper there for free. And as Dave was saying before, it's about 60 pages of jam-packed full of tools and resources and links to other resources that we have for each one of you. But really, we want to debut today our kickoff to the first ever virtual book club that AALU Gamma is hosting. On Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern, we'll post discussion questions on the online discussion forum you see here in front of you. You can navigate to this discussion forum by clicking on that recruiting series link and have a conversation with your peers from near and far around the world about how you are putting together the white paper's findings to work to create a high impact recruiting culture in your own firm. This is great for your teams. It's great for you, a great way to lead your teams along throughout the white paper and use those takeaways and consider this moment to really create your own recruiting mindset and culture in your firm. So with that, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, but if you do have any questions, you can always contact myself, Emily Boynton. I am on the Unify website. Of course, you can go to our unifytheprofession.org website for our free resources. As Dave was saying before, we have ebooks on retention, recruitment, on leading change, and we have a fantastic new research that's coming out this week, and we need your help in recruiting that research on leading change. Leading change through the advisor's eyes specifically is what we're going to be focusing on, and we'll be releasing that research survey this week. Our research is only as good as the field who participates in it. So we hope that each and every one of you take an opportunity this week, this month, to participate in that research survey so that we can continue to build these resources and educational opportunities for everyone in the field and to establish great financial security within the field. So I hope that you will all be a part of that research survey. I hope that each one of you will check out the white paper once again on unifytheprofession.org. You can download that for free and participate in our virtual book club, which we will be once again posting on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you have fun with those discussions. Make sure to ask questions, and our experts in the field of recruitment will be there to help bring about different discussions and different solutions. We're all in this together, so I hope that you all have an opportunity to be a part of that with us. Dave, any parting words?
No, I don't think I have. I think I laid it all out there. So I just encourage you to keep changing, because I think change is going to be here. And Emily mentioned those recent ebooks that we've done. Change, I think, is at an accelerated pace. So even more so now with some of this COVID stuff. So keep being nimble, keep adapting, keep investing in people and technology, and you too will continue to grow. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you all for participating in our kickoff for the book club. Tune in on June 22nd for the ending of our book club with Ed Deutschlander, who's CEO of North Star Resource Group. And he'll be there to finish up the book club and answer all of your questions and talk about his philosophy on recruiting. So thank you all for being here today. And I hope that I get to talk with you and tell you more about the foundation in the future. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.